Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our channel. This is the Buddhist Meditator, and I am Lama Dawa Zangpo, a traditionally trained Tibetan Buddhist practitioner. And we do this approximately once a week to try to help people that are relatively new or curious about Buddhism, and our orientation is Tibetan Buddhist. Which is very broad and encompasses a lot of pretty much all Buddhism, you could say. But the focus is for basically beginners and people that are relatively new and trying to learn and interested in learning the basics. So we have Tal tonight with us, and Tal is a beginning meditator and has some, every week has been asking some very, very good questions that should be relevant to many of the viewers. So I also would like to just say at the very beginning here that if you would like to join us on Zoom for a live talk and ask questions and so on, you're warmly invited. Please contact us at the Buddhist Meditator at gmail.com. And we'd be happy to talk to you and line that up with you. So one and all, you're all welcome to join us. The more the merrier, and we love having the diversity of people with different backgrounds and various levels of experience with meditation practice and Buddhist practice. So, okay, getting that out of the way, we can jump right in. And I just want to say this is always unscripted. This is just off the cuff, spontaneous discussion. So, Tal, what's your question tonight to start us?
So as you said, in the context of Buddhist meditation, and we've discussed in the past mantras and some prerequisite type of info like the Four Noble Truths and the Four Thoughts, which will be in the description below. But today, I'd like to ask you to hone in on a few preemptive to meditating prayers, their purpose, the context of them, how long it takes even, that kind of thing.
Good. Okay, excellent question. So yes, the idea here and what you're getting at with your question, I think, is with meditation, some people just sort of just sit down and just kind of start to meditate. But in the Buddhist context, we try to have a sense of, you could say, orientation, to orient ourselves, to familiarize and remind ourselves of why we're practicing, and sort of what the goal is, you could say, the perspective. And we sum that all up in these, what we call prayers. It's not a prayer in the sort of Western traditional sense of where we say it's very dualistic, where there's the person who is praying to something outside of him or herself, usually a god or something like that. So we use the word prayer, but I should emphasize that we use it kind of loosely. It's not necessarily the best word because it does carry a lot of baggage with us, with it.
Yeah.
The word that's sometimes used in place of prayer is aspiration or aspirational prayers. But the idea is that we're giving voice and we're bringing our mind and our intention to the mat. So we sit down with intentionality, right? It's not just sort of just a physical exercise or even just a mental exercise. The sense is that there's a whole package of which meditation is maybe the core of it in some sense, but there's a lot of important stuff that surrounds that. So what do we do? That's your question. I spoke either last week or the week before. We talked a little bit about the concept of what we call in Buddhism taking refuge. So it's impossible to talk about these things without sort of backtracking and trying to give a larger picture because, of course, I don't know who the audience is here, who you are viewing this, but if you're very, very new to this, then I feel it's important to give you some broader perspective and not just assume you know kind of what we're talking about. This is a channel more or less for beginners, you could say. So in the course of kind of stepping on, let's say stepping onto the Buddhist path, we have to understand a bit about where we're at. And that's why the Buddha started with something that we think of as the Four Noble Truths. And then also these four, as you alluded to, Tal, the four thoughts that we say turn the mind away from just being kind of a worldly person who doesn't think about our potential, and turn us towards trying to better ourselves, you could say, and have some sort of lofty goal. So that's why we call these aspirational kind of prayers. So the notion is, to start off, again, this is a very basic. We're stuck. We're not enlightened. We have to sort of acknowledge with a certain humble beginning that we are operating from a state of, we can use the word confusion, because we're confused in the sense of we're not completely clear about everything. You know, we're just not clear. We do our best and we have good intentions, but we how can I say this? We have assumptions about how the world is and about who we and how we are. And the humility that I spoke of is starting with the idea of acknowledging I don't have all the answers. In fact, I don't actually, what I know is very minuscule compared to what I don't know. So we start off with that. We actually start off with the idea that I make mistakes. Even though I have good intentions, I'm constantly making mistakes. I'm tripping over myself, or I am caught up in certain habits and patterns of my mind, of my behavior that are ingrained, and they're not really in sort of my best interests always, right? And I default, all of us, but I'm going to say I default to pride, impatience, jealousy, desire, and some kind of fundamental, just sort of dullness, you know, not being completely clear. And so that's humbling, and it's just to be very, very honest. So the idea is we start off, the Buddhist path is about not deceiving oneself. So all of that is the backdrop to the idea of an aspirational prayer, is to say, I can do better, and I want to do better. And even you could almost go as far as to say, I need to do better. Now, that's a hard one, because we may say, well, I don't need to, I can just accept who I am, and so on and so forth. And that's, of course, true. But when we step back and go, wait a minute, I have this life, and my experience falls very far short of what I would like it to be, what it could be, and what my potential might be. So from that standpoint, I need to do better. I need to aspire towards self-improvement. So it's the opposite of being complacent. So when we do prayers, it's to, may I be the best I can be. And in Buddhism, we say a awakened state of mind is what we say. We use from Sanskrit, the original word is Bud, kind of the root word. Buddha, it means to awaken. There's a notion of awakening. There's a notion of becoming more awake, more present, more aware. So the prayer is basically, may I do this? May I accomplish that? May I become awake, fully awake, or at least more awake? May I enter this journey? May I start on this path? May I move in this direction? My life should get better and better. My clarity should get better and better. My heart should get more and more open. My ability to be present and not distracted should get greater and greater. So we do that. Now, the notion of refuge, which is foundational to Buddhism, and probably not a surprise to almost anybody watching this video, but we say, okay, well, are there standards? Are there benchmarks? Are there signposts? Are there things that I can kind of safely trust to keep me and direct me and guide me on this path? So we have these three objects of refuge, again, that I spoke of last week or the week before. And it's the Buddha, not as a god, but just as someone who really fully exemplified what we're trying to do, reached as far as it's possible to go, meaning almost inconceivably perfected. And again, that's a loaded kind of statement. So we don't have the time to go into that in any great depth, but let's just say if somebody is completely free and unstuck in their thinking, in their thought process, in their mind, if they're completely unattached to anything, if they have dropped expectations and judgments and opinions and just have a fresh, open mind that's completely free, completely spontaneous, completely present, and only responding to the needs of others because it's selfless. That's what we call a Buddha. Anybody that is in that exalted of a state. And it's not Indian, Japanese, Chinese, Tibetan. It's not any cultural thing. It's any being has completely freed his or her mind. So that's what we take refuge in. And we say, well, what gives us refuge? Refuge is that which we can rely on for kind of safety, in a sense. Safety in the sense of reliable. So there's a notion when we take refuge in the Buddha is not someone who made things up. He didn't sugarcoat the truth. He didn't deceive anyone. He did not pull the wool over our eyes. He spoke clearly and plainly about how things are and how we can apply and practice a path that will help us break through in that same kind of way. So part of the aspirational prayers at the beginning of a meditation session is I take refuge in that being, in beings like that, not just that being, but anyone who's a Buddha throughout, let's say, throughout the universe. That's someone who is worthy of almost more than respect, like really worthy of honoring that achievement and acknowledging it and basically saying, I want to follow in those, I want to achieve that. That's worth taking refuge in as we can say a role model. And then furthermore, it's not that the Buddha does anything for us directly, cannot save us, so to speak, like sometimes we have in the Western traditions, where a savior comes and so-called saves us. We don't have that in Buddhism. The notion is we save ourselves through our own efforts. But we need to know what direction to put those efforts, where to put that energy, how to do it, and what are the sort of pitfalls and so on to do it properly and efficiently and effectively. So we take refuge in what the Buddha taught us and taught humanity. Again, not from a culture, not from a specific time or anything like that, but just as general, universal principles and practices. So that we call the Dharma, the teachings. And these are, again, I have to say this, these are not Buddhist teachings. These are universal teachings. We've just stuck this label on and called these teachings Buddhist. And we call this Buddhism. But that's just a human label that we use out of convenience. There's no such thing as Buddhism or Buddhist in some deep sense. There's no real such thing as that. It's a convention. So those are two of what we call the three rare special jewels that we can take refuge in. The Buddha as this great example of what an awakened being is, his or her teachings, which again is the Dharma. And then this has been followed and practiced and achieved by many people, men and women from different walks of life, different backgrounds, for many centuries. So we take refuge actually in that community of beings who actually have awakened, at least to a significant extent. So that's also an object of refuge, because if you're on a journey, you usually need companions or guides or people that can reassure us or say, yes, I did this too, this works, so like that. So this is a very long-winded answer to your question I'm trying to get to, which is at the very beginning of meditation session, we say, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And by the benefit, then we say something more in this tradition. We say, by the benefit of the good things that I do and have done and will continue to do, meaning being kind, being generous, being selfless, being available for others, being patient, these kinds of qualities, by being diligent, by meditating and achieving some kind of present awareness, all these things. By the benefit of all these things that I do in my life to try to improve myself and be of genuine benefit to this world, may I wake up for the benefit, not just of myself, but the benefit of all. That's the prayer we make at the beginning. And you can make your own sort of version of that. And then there's traditional, you can get it from the Tibetan, which many people easily memorize, and there's translations of it. It's something like this: Sanjay Chu Dongsoki Choknam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Chapsuchi Dagi Jinsoji Peso Namki Drola Penchir Sanjay Druparsho. You can say something like that if you want. You can get this written down. You can find it on the internet. We can send it to you from this channel if you want, or you can say it in English or whatever your language is, or however you want to do it. But that's a formal kind of beginning.
Would you mind repeating it again? I take refuge in the Buddha, and then you said a couple of similar to
yes,
that.
let me see. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. By the merit, we say, the merit of accomplishing good things, I'm paraphrasing here, may I wake up, may I achieve Buddhahood, is what we say, for the welfare or the benefit of all sentient beings.
Got it.
And we say that 3 times, and not just, just memorize it, but we kind of think about the meaning as we're saying those words.
Is that the reason why you repeat
Because
it?
they're very profound.
I'm
sorry, what?
Is that the reason why we're saying it 3 times? So,
Well, I think there's reasons for why it's traditionally 3 times, but it's done 3 times. So maybe each time it sinks in a little deeper or something. The first time, maybe we're just sort of saying it and reminding ourselves, and then we contemplate it. And the third time, it should get nice and deep, and we really resonate with the meaning of it. And then you can sit for a moment or two if you'd like, just kind of gather yourself, and again, sort of have that intentionality. And then you can go into your meditation session, or you could say better, because it's a little more complete, after you do the refuge prayer, which is what we call what I just recited, you can recite some version, some translation or some version of, as we talked about last week, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind away from the world and towards the Dharma. And I'll repeat those briefly again for people. The first one is this precious human life, this precious human birth, meaning this opportunity we have that's special and rare and kind of unique. When we think about, I'm not going to go into the detailed explanation tonight, but it's a unique opportunity. And then we contemplate that. These are almost more contemplations than prayers.
can I ask you? I'm sorry to interject here. Is there a time frame? This is something that I thought about. Is how long is that contemplation?
On the 4 thoughts?
Yeah.
Never timed it. I would say anywhere from 5 or 10 seconds to 10 or 15 or 20, 30 seconds each. Not a lot of times necessary, but enough time to at least bring it to mind and give it a little moment's reflection of, oh yeah.
I only ask because I've spent sometimes a minute or 2. So like I was just.
Well, that's fine. No, there's no problem. You can't do it too much.
No, I know. I'm just trying to understand, gauge, what is normal, I guess is.
I don't think there is anything as normal. I think when I started, yes, I probably spent a minute or 2 on each also, because, you're getting familiar with it and you want to spend a little more time with it. So sure. And again, there's lots of metaphors and analogies, and there's further explanation about these 4 thoughts. So you can bring some of those to mind. And the idea is to get some kind of sense of certainty. So you think of one of the thoughts, this precious human life, this opportunity, and really mull it over. And give it a good 30 or 60 seconds, give it a minute or 2. Why not? Absolutely. And then think about the fact that life and this opportunity is fleeting. It's fragile. It's impermanent. All means the same thing. But it's very fragile, and it could end any time. We don't know that we'll even sleep through the night and wake up in the morning. People die in their sleep. So don't take it for granted. That's the actual message. Don't take this life for granted. Don't take this opportunity for granted. It's an opportunity because we have this ability, this knowledge, this a mind that can understand these things and understand the importance of them. And we have access to these teachings. That's what makes this a precious human opportunity. And then, so to appreciate that. So appreciate first. And then again, don't take it for granted, because it can slip through your fingers and suddenly you're on your deathbed or you're taking your last breath. And it's like, what have I done with my life that's really meaningful? Did I spend my whole life just at a job trying to make money? And now I'm dying and I can't take it with me. It doesn't do me any good. What did I do with my life that was really meaningful? Am I leaving this world a better place than when I came into it? Have I contributed? Have I done anything really of great significance? And have I cleared away some of my own personal confusion? Or am I as confused or more confused than when I started this lifetime? So that's the second thought, that it's fleeting. The third thought is, third and fourth are sort of interchangeable. The order doesn't really matter. You could say the third thought often is everything has causes and consequences. Everything has prior causes. Nothing is just completely out of the blue random in this universe. And examine that for a minute or two, as you said. And when I think about that there are consequences to what we say, to what we think, and to what we do. So there are consequences. That means there's an imperative to be mindful, to be conscious, to be attentive, to be caring, to think about that. What is our goal? Maybe on the most superficial level, you'd say, well, our goal, and I can probably speak for most everyone, is to be happy, find some kind of happiness. What is happiness? That's a question we can ask ourselves. What is real happiness? Like, what is lasting happiness? Is there such a thing? Is it even possible? Well, we took refuge in the Buddha because somebody that achieved, so we understand true contentment, true peace of mind, true lasting happiness. That's what we're after. That's our goal. That's the orientation. That's the direction we want to head towards. The trajectory of one's life. What is the trajectory of one's life? Is it just to, make a ton of money? I mean, that's one goal that many, maybe even most humans have. But is it the ultimate goal? Is it the best goal? Is it the highest goal? Is it the most deeply satisfying goal? I mean, money is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. So causes and consequences. That's the third thought that is contemplated prior to sitting down and actually starting one's meditation session. I mean, you sit down, but you contemplate before you start following your breath or doing the actual meditation.
That's the one that people in the West typically know the word karma.
Yes. So we can summarize that whole concept into the word karma, which does not mean fate or what a lot of kind of Western people think of as karma. But
I think I'm not sure how others have perceived it, but I've always, before I had any context, kind of perceived it as a balancing of the universe. And that's pretty much it. I have always thought of karma being a balancer.
Well, in this context, it's not really like that. It's like I said, it's very specific. It's karma means you do something and there's a result. And the basic result of most things is karma reinforces itself. In other words, patterns and habits, because we're creatures of habit. What we do is, generally speaking, quite predictable. We respond to things in a certain way. We behave certain ways. Our personality is a certain way. It's fairly limited. It's fairly restricted. It's fairly constrained. If we meet somebody, they're pretty much usually the same. They don't just act completely, unless maybe they're psychotic or bipolar or something. But no, for most of us, we're pretty consistent. And that's not necessarily, we think, well, being consistent is a good thing. Well, yes, it is a good thing. It's a fine thing. But there's a difference between being sort of so stuck and limited versus having ability to be more somewhat spontaneous, spontaneity and kind of creative freedom to respond to things in a fresh kind of way. And fresh meaning appropriate. What's appropriate in every circumstance? If we always do things in the same way because it's safe, familiar and safe, well, then that's what we get. But then that's the notion of karma. We think a certain thought, it's going to perpetuate further thoughts down the road that are probably along those lines or somewhat similar, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Habits are habits. They reinforce and they deepen themselves, So to all of that's the third thought. The fourth, and maybe in some ways the most important thought, is stopping and getting a real perspective on this world, meaning our society, our civilization, we're embedded, all of us, we're embedded in our life. And our life is embedded in, our family, in our friends, in our lovers, in our community, in our nation, and so on. So we have all these concentric rings kind of identities, and that's the world. And the way the world is set up basically is, well, of course, for starters, we live in a world of goods and services and material things, and so meaning objects. And we, speaking for most of us, we want things from the world. We desire things. We are taught that we should try to achieve things. We should try to accumulate things. That we are taught these things, right? It's all reinforced by TV and movies and our parents and our teachers and billboards on the street and everywhere you look. I mean, that's just, we don't even question it. We're here to, to be consumers. We're here to gather a lot of things to make ourselves happy and comfortable and all that stuff. That's not questioned by the vast majority of people. A so-called, to use the word that I don't often like to use, spiritual people, or people that are practicing a spiritual, religious, or philosophical path. It's certainly, as Buddhists, we could say we stop and actually can question that. Is it really our highest calling, and how important is it to just strive and strive and strive and put all this energy and work and effort and hope and so on into acquiring things? Now, I'm not saying we should just reject the world and not acquire anything. I'm not saying that. The idea is, though, that of perspective and not grasping too hard or getting too hung up, too attached, too desirous of all these things, because if we stop and really look and start to question, do those things really give me happiness? Maybe a temporary happiness, maybe yes, a sense of satisfaction, sure. But everything gets old and gets worn out and suddenly we don't like it anymore. We change our mind about something, or something we thought we wanted ends up really kind of disappointing us. So many things, right, happen all the time. So do those things really give us, I mean, we all know many people that are extremely wealthy and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean they're happy. Very wealthy and very famous and very rich people commit suicide, or, have all kinds of disappointments in their life. There are all kinds of bad circumstances and things happen. So do those things, I'm saying things, meaning things that are external to us, that we're taught to acquire and want, do they really make us happy? Or maybe they actually often lead to disappointment and even unhappiness.
There was a good line that I heard, that the things you own end up owning you.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of truth in that. There's quite a bit of truth in that. So, so that's the fourth thought, basically, is the idea. This is not a popular thing for me to say. So those of you watching, please bear with it. But well, let's just say that we can question those things, and instead of seeking outside of ourselves, look within to what is real contentment, real peace of mind, real happiness. And you can have all of it. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your Maserati and Mercedes and vehicles and cars and boats and airplanes and clothing, a closet full of everything and whatever. You can have that. But if you're not attached to it, if that stuff isn't like the way you measure your success or your happiness, then it's okay. So the fourth thought is just, where's true happiness come from? So we say the world, if you put your eggs in that basket, that's from the Buddhist perspective, that's generally not where our true happiness and contentment comes from. Contentment comes from acceptance. It comes from having a good conscience, clean conscience. It comes from a sense of satisfaction of knowing you're helping others and just having the desire to help others, just really being a magnanimous and generous and kind and loving person. Those are the people that have true peace of mind and contentment. That's what a Buddha and I think a truly spiritual person from any tradition, has within him or herself. So those are the four thoughts that are contemplated. We take refuge, we contemplate these thoughts, then we're finally ready to meditate. And then we sit down, or we're already sitting,
And all of that would take, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes prior, something
at the most, not even 10 minutes. Yeah, a handful of minutes, a few minutes.
Gotcha.
I'd say from anywhere from, because a minute's a pretty long period of time.
For sure. And you notice that the most when you're meditating.
Yeah, yes. So yes, 2, 3, 4 minutes, probably plenty of time to spend on those refuge prayers and these 4 contemplations. If you want to do it a little faster, or take a little more time, that's fine. There's no rules here. But those are general guidelines.
Perfect.
Okay, so that was a great question and probably very, very important.
Thank you, Lama Dawa.
Do you have a follow-up? Is there we have time for another question or further discussion or what?
I think we'll leave it there. I think if people have questions, please comment below. Like, subscribe, share. Please share. That helps us out. It helps get the word out so that people can ask questions and can potentially join us. The biggest way that you could help us is by sharing the video and obviously watching it and asking questions in the comments below. And thank you so much, Lama Dawa. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure, Tal. Thank you very much too. And thank you everybody for watching.
Have a good night.